The West Tigers haven't just hit rock bottom, they have detonated the bedrock and fallen into a subterranean abyss of their own making. While fans were distracted by mounting losses on the field, a silent, vicious civil war was tearing the boardroom apart, leading to the total decapitation of the club's entire leadership structure. This wasn't a standard corporate reshuffle or a polite series of resignations, it was a scorched earth purge triggered by internal findings so damning they couldn't be ignored any longer. The CEO is gone, every single director has been unceremoniously sacked, and the NRL has been forced to intervene to stop the bleeding of a foundation that was once considered a cornerstone of the league. You think you know why this club has struggled for a decade, but the reality involves a level of dysfunction that goes far deeper than a few bad signings or a coach who lost the locker room. The truth is, the Tigers were being hollowed out from the inside by the very people sworn to protect them. Subscribe to all sports updates for the fastest breaking news in the game. The explosion began when an independent review, commissioned after years of systemic failure, finally pulled back the curtain on a culture of arrogance and chronic mismanagement. For years, the West Tigers board operated like an exclusive country club rather than a professional sporting organization, prioritizing internal politics and individual power plays over the performance of the team. The review uncovered a staggering lack of accountability, where failure was not only tolerated but shielded by a web of historical alliances. When the findings were finally presented, the tension reached a breaking point, leading to an immediate and total collapse of the existing power structure. It wasn't just about the losses on the ladder, it was about a fundamental betrayal of the fans' trust and a blatant disregard for the basic principles of professional sports administration. This was a house of cards built on an ego-driven foundation, and it only took one honest look at the books and the culture to bring the entire thing crashing down in a single afternoon. The departure of CEO Justin Pascoe marks the end of one of the most controversial tenures in modern rugby league history, characterized by flashy marketing and dismal results. While Pascoe was often the public face of the club's commercial efforts, his inability to bridge the gap between the front office and the football department became a terminal flaw. Insiders suggest that the atmosphere within the club had become toxic, with a massive divide between the corporate goals and the brutal reality of a team that couldn't stop losing. The board, led by Lee Hazepantelis, was seen as equally complicit, often engaging in public spats and defensive posturing that made the club a laughingstock in the media. When the Holman Barnes Group finally pulled the trigger, it was a move designed to wipe the slate completely clean. They realized that you cannot fix a sinking ship by just patching the holes. Sometimes you have to replace the entire crew and the captain if you ever want to see land again. At the heart of this chaos is the fans' decade-long nightmare of watching a proud foundation crumble into irrelevance while the leadership remained stagnant. For over 10 years, the West Tigers have been the definition of mediocrity, failing to make the finals since 2011 and becoming synonymous with the dreaded wooden spoon. This board oversaw a revolving door of coaches, from Mick Potter to Jason Taylor, Ivan Cleary, Michael Maguire, and the ill-fated return of Tim Sheens, each one discarded as a scapegoat for the board's own failures. Every time a coach was sacked, the directors stayed in their comfortable chairs, pointing fingers and promising a new era that never actually arrived. The fans' loyalty was weaponized against them, as they continued to turn up to Leach Hart and Campbelltown only to be met with more excuses and more defeats. This total purge is the only victory the fans have had in years, as it finally removes the common denominator in a decade of embarrassment and professional decline. All Sports Updates is your home for the real stories behind the headlines. The NRL's involvement in this restructuring signals just how dire the situation had become for the joint venture club, which was bordering on total collapse. The governing body cannot afford to have one of its biggest Sydney markets perpetually in shambles, and the pressure from head office played a significant role in forcing this radical change. By appointing Shane Richardson as an interim leader, the club is finally bringing in someone with a proven track record of success and a no-nonsense approach to football operations. Richardson is the polar opposite of the previous administration. He is a man who understands that a rugby league club exists to win games, not to win press conferences or social media battles. His arrival marks the beginning of a brutal audit where every single department, from scouting to medical to coaching, will be under the microscope. The message is clear: the days of jobs for the boys are over, and anyone who isn't contributing to a winning culture is being shown the exit door immediately. The storytelling of the West Tigers has been one of a slow-motion car crash, but this latest chapter is more like a controlled demolition intended to clear space for a skyscraper. The shockwaves of this board dismissal are being felt across the entire league, as other underperforming clubs are now looking nervously at their own structures. It serves as a warning that historical ties and corporate shielding will no longer protect those who preside over consistent failure. The removal of the board wasn't just a reaction to the 2023 season, it was a response to a culture that had become comfortable with losing. When you lose the will to be embarrassed by failure, you lose the right to lead a professional organization. The explosion at the Tigers was a necessary act of violence against a status quo that had become a cancer on the club's identity, finally giving the orange and black faithful a reason to believe that the cycle of misery might actually be broken. The human cost of this upheaval is significant, with dozens of staff members now wondering if their roles will exist under the new regime. However, the prevailing sentiment within the inner sanctum of the NRL is that this was a mercy killing of an administration that had long since run out of ideas. The surprise wasn't that the board was sacked, but that it took this long for the owners to realize that the brand was being permanently damaged by the incompetence at the top. The storytelling of the Tigers has always been about potential and youth pathways, but those words became hollow when the top-tier management couldn't provide a stable environment for that talent to flourish. Benji Marshall now finds himself in the unique position of coaching a team where the people who hired him have all been fired. It is a baptism of fire for the rookie coach, who must now navigate a total rebuild of the club's soul while simultaneously trying to win football games in the toughest competition. As the dust settles on the ruins of the old board, the focus shifts to the future and whether this radical surgery will actually save the patient. The appointment of a smaller, more corporate-focused board is intended to streamline decision-making and remove the ego-driven roadblocks that have plagued the club for years. No longer will directors be meddling in team selection or publicizing their personal grievances in the Sunday papers. The new structure is designed to be invisible, allowing the football experts to do their jobs without interference from people who have never laced up a boot or managed a high-performance department. This is the Tigers' last stand. If this total overhaul doesn't work, there are serious questions about the long-term viability of the joint venture itself. The stakes have never been higher, and the eyes of the entire sporting world are watching to see if this explosion leads to a rebirth or just leaves behind a larger pile of ash. The real reason the board exploded wasn't just one bad season, it was the realization that the West's Tigers had become a club without a heartbeat. The fans deserve more than a corporate logo and a history of 2005, they deserve a professional organization that treats every loss as a tragedy and every win as a requirement. This purge is a loud declaration that the era of excuses is officially dead and buried. As the NRL steps in to guide the transition, the message to the players and the remaining staff is clear: the shield has been removed, and there is nowhere left to hide.